Hello! Now we're going to look at a problem where we're looking at probability distributions. We're going to make some histograms, talk about z-functions. So the next tab contains the annual returns for 30 separate mutual funds, and what we want to do is create a histogram to show the distribution of those funds. We're going to calculate the mean and the standard deviation of the annual returns. We're going to standardize the annual returns to have a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1. And so we're going to confirm that the standard deviation is confirm the standardized work by calculating the mean and the standard deviation. And then we're going to create a histogram to show the standardized returns. Now, especially in 3 and 4, we'll be talking about z-values, and that's how we standardize this. You'll see z-values pop up quite a bit, especially when you're looking at things like when you're calculating out safety stock, when you're dealing with inventory. Also, if you're doing program management, you're using PERT, which is Program Evaluation Review Technique. You'll use z-value in there for calculating out some of the different ways of finding out whether the project's going to be on time or not. But anyway, let's dive right in. So here's our 30 different funds. Here's our annual return. And so the very first thing that we want to do is we want to create a histogram of that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to grab our annual return columns. We will go insert and we'll go right to our histogram. We'll do the square there. And so now we have it. It's broken up into larger bins. We want to make that a little bit smaller because it's really only binning it in 4 different categories. And so let's take care of that right now. And so to change this, 4 categories isn't really all that great. So let's look at changing that. So I'm going to right click on the horizontal axis. I'm going to go to Format Axis. It'll bring up my stuff over here talking about everything. And I have my different bin widths and whatnot. All this stuff that I can sit there and play with. And so what we want to do is we can set it up by, we can say what our bin width's going to be. We can give our number of bins. We can play with a lot of different things in here. So we can say go to 6 different bins. And we can start to see that starts to give us more of a normal distribution shape. Let's go to 8 because this one will look pretty good with 8. And there we go. And so now what I have is I've got my bins. And it automatically redid my bins. And so what is a bin? That's just kind of it collects the same numbers through there. So like this first bin would be, it collects anything from 0.007 to 0.030. And so it counts the number of instances that we have. So we've got 3 funds that are in between that return of 0.007 and 0.030. And so then we can deal with it on that. So we can also go in there and let's change this over to, instead of being a number, let's make it a percentage of, let's say just 2 decimal places should be enough. And there we go. And since these are a percentage return, we can do that. So anything from a 0.7% return to a 3.03, and I can make this a little bit longer so it all ends up there. And so, as always, let's make this a little bit more correct as a chart. And so over here we'll put annual return. And since I already put percentages on there, I don't really need to put a unit there. So axis title, we'll change this to frequency because we are measuring how often that happens. And our chart title would just be distribution of annual returns. Always need to have axis titles and whatnot, because now we can look at that and we know what's going on. So that's great. Let's go back here. What part 2? Calculate the mean and standard deviation of the annual returns. That's pretty easy. We don't have mean in Excel, but we do have average, which is the same thing. So we take those, we click all that. There's our average. and our standard deviation. Now, when we go to do this, we've got a couple of different, we've got a couple of different ways that we can do things. We, stdev is the command, and you notice we've got the old one here, which is the originally what they've done, but now you can do standard deviation of the sample or the population. The population would be every single data point that we have, including everything and errors and whatnot. The sample is just what we're looking at, and it will ignore anything that's not an actual number. Typically, we're going to end up using stdev, and I didn't hit my tab, so it didn't fill out. So stdev.s tab, and then we go straight down here, highlight all those, and there we go. So our mean is 0.091. Our standard deviations of the returns is 0.047. And once again, these are actually percentages. So what we could do is we could come and put those in percentages and say that average return is 9.1 and the standard deviation of the return is 4.65. Okay, so we've done 1 and 2. Let's go to 3. We're going to standardize the annual returns to have a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1, and then we're going to confirm that by actually working those out. So this is our z-value, and once again, you'll see this on tables quite a bit. It's a very useful statistical framework, and this is stuff that we can look up on tables for a normal distribution. So what are we going to do with it? Well, what is our z-value? Our z-value is going to be our annual return for each instance. So that would be kind of our xi. In the book, it's just labeled as x, but that's the x value. So we're going to subtract from that our mean. And actually, we're going to hit F4 and lock that in. I'll put those $2 signs there. And then we're going to have to divide it by the standard deviation. So we'll put our parentheses here, and then we'll divide it by our standard deviation. And that's going to give us a negative number, negative 1.804. So we are below the mean, which actually we look at it, that's as low as we're going to get, so that should be fine. Let's now just drag that down. And so now we've populated all our z-values, except we seem to have a problem. So let's go look, divide by 0, that's not good. Oh, I forgot to lock that one in, so we'll go change it. This is also why you'll notice a lot when I go to check things, I'll always click on something to make sure things are rolling correctly. Because sometimes if you've got numbers in there, you wouldn't even know that it's wrong. So we're going to lock in our standard deviation. And now we'll do that again. Okay, and so this time it seems to have rolled correctly. Everything's holding great, so that's exactly what I wanted. And so the last thing is we've got the mean and the standard deviation. Since I've already got the equations in for this one, I'm just going to highlight these two and drag it over. And there we go. So 0 to 1, which is 0 to 100%. So that is all exactly what I wanted. So we're going to say no, we're going to just put this back to number. We'll do the same thing over here. Okay, and so we've confirmed that we've successfully standardized this using a z-value. Mean is 0, standard deviation is 1. It's exactly what we expect. Okay, now what do we do? Well, we've got one more histogram to make. I'm going to highlight my z-values. I'm going to go to Insert. I'm going to insert a histogram. And once again, I've got the multiple different bins. So I am going to go and format the axis. I want to set it the same as the other one. We want to go with 8 bins. And we'll just stretch this over a little bit. We'll do the same thing that we did with the other one. We'll put in axis titles, frequency. I don't think I spelled that right. F-U-E-N-C-Y, frequency, and down here, we'll call this z-value. We've got it bin together. call this the Oh, I can't type this morning either. Distribution of annual returns. Okay. Now, the important thing to note, these two probability graphs, these two distributions, look exactly the same. And they should, because nothing's really changed. All we've done is we've standardized our returns using a z-value, so the frequency and everything is going to be the exact same. It's going to be identical. The only change is what's along this x-axis here. And there we go. That is, let's double check. Yes, we did everything. That is how we solved this problem, and I will see you guys again for the next one.